party tonight! What? TV party tonight!
Oh, we got nothing better to do than watch TV and have a couple of brews.
Don't want to talk about anything else!
We don't want to know!
We're dedicated
Yes.
to our favorite shows!
Oh, my circuit!
Everybody loves Hippo Toad!
Scary dog!
Dancing at Blurnsville!
Futurama!
Good evening. You are listening to a Radulich Broadcasting Premier Podcast TV Party Tonight. I'm your host, the mandated reporter, and frankly, I'm mortified, Mr. Mark Radulich. And tonight we continue our look back at the great works of David Simon. Yes, take our hands and cross that bridge into Baltimore as we take you from the corner to the Deuce. On this episode, we are finishing up our discussion of Homicide, Life on the Street, Season 7. And just for shits and giggles, for kicks and pinches, for tickles and squabs, ladies and gentlemen, because I love Jesse Starcher more than life itself, we will also be discussing what operates as basically the series finale, Homicide, the movie. And introducing my polyamory partner in crime, my primary, my best friend, my brother from another mother, ladies and gentlemen, big time Jessicans, the bratty one, Jesse Starcher. How do you do, sir?
So
the man of
nicknames.
1,000 nicknames.
Not enough time, though. My goodness, Mark Radulich, it's good to be back here. We're going to be talking Homicide Season 7. We're finishing out this series, and I will say that compared to the previous two, I don't know if you're going to find a whole lot here that you really, really enjoyed, but we're going to talk about it tonight.
I'm going to tell you what, Jesse, because I trust you. I trust you implicitly. The safe word is banana, but I don't think I'm going to need it with you. I'm just going to let you be the master here. I'm going to let you take over. This is your show, baby doll. I'm just, listen.
All right.
This is your dog to fuck. I'm just holding the head, baby. In other words, I watched what you told me to watch, and I watched Homicide the movie, but this is your discussion, so let's hit it. And if this is the first time you're watching this, we are looking at all the shows that David Simon had a hand in creating or executive producing. So it's Homicide, The Corner, The Wire, Treme, Generation Kill, Show Me a Hero, The Deuce, all of them. And we're going season by season. So this is episode 3 of From the Corner to the Deuce, Homicide Season 7, and Homicide the movie. With that said, take it away, my love.
All right. So real quick, Season 6 recap, just in case you don't remember what happened at the end of Season 6. That almost was the end of Homicide, the series, at that time. From what I understand, reading from the wiki, Seinfeld had gone off the air at this point in time, so NBC had to scramble to kind of keep things going in their lineup. So they left Homicide on here for one more season. So just kind of put that in your head, thinking that what that ending would have been. Bayless was left on the table. Nobody known if he was going to be recovering or not. Pembleton retires, basically hands in his badge and resigns. And we're kind of left with just questions. So, the end of season 6, Junior Bunk shows up at the squad room. He ends up shooting up the squad room, shoots Gardy and Ballard. The whole squad went all in on Georgia Ray. Bayless ends up, Georgia Ray Mahoney, I should say. Bayless ends up taking a bullet for Pembleton. Like I said, he gets put into the hospital. Pembleton gets Kellerman to confess to killing Luther Mahoney, which has set all these events in motion. And then at the end of that, Pembleton turned in his badge and resigned. So season 7, we're going to try a little something new tonight. We uploaded some stuff into our slides. So Mark, are you going to be controlling the slides for me tonight?
I will. I'm like Vanna White in this shit tonight. Yeah.
I love it. Here we go. So we got some new faces. Number one.
Starcher, who is this beautiful creature?
Yes, this right here is Renee Shepard, Detective Renee Shepard. She's new detective on the scene, although it seems like she's kind of It's not like she just showed up at the beginning of the season. She's been there for a little bit. You can tell she's kind of already, at least got her bearings of the homicide unit, but she's still the new detective. No nonsense kind of gal. Seems to be fitting in pretty well. And then before I go to the next slide, I do want to say the squad room got a makeover too. I didn't put a picture of the squad room here, but you open up to this weird like purple and blue squad room. It looks all nice and new. Of course, they're trying to erase everything, all these memories of what just happened in there in the last season where people were getting shot. They try to distance themselves from that by putting this whole new paint. They rearranged everything. So it's kind of weird when you step back into the squad room for the first time since season 6, how new and fresh it looks. So bring us up our next face, our next new face of season 7. And there is Giancarlo. Tell me.
From Breaking Bad, The Mandalorian. Dude, Giancarlo Esposito is number 1 in everything, and he's awesome in everything. Look how young he is here. Little Giancarlo.
Right. This is my first exposure to his acting. Of course, I was watching this back in 99.
Can we just talk about that for a second? How, like, between Homicide and Homicide the movie, every actor on Earth has been in this show. Like, just all of them.
Look at all those guest appearances that showed
every
up on
actor
the show.
you've ever seen on television and movies, especially on the East Coast, is in between Homicide and Homicide the movie has been on this show. Like, that is one of the fun parts about watching this so many years later, is to go back and go, I know you. Hey, wait a minute. That's that guy. Oh my God, that's him from that thing.
Right. I remember when I first watched this season, I didn't like this character. This is when I first watched it. And then when rewatching this, I obviously knew who this was from Breaking Bad. This is oh my goodness. I've been watching Better Call Saul here lately too. He's obviously in that. But yeah, Giancarlo is a fantastic actor, and I've definitely grown to appreciate him over time.
You know who Giancarlo Esposito played that we talked about on this network, this very network?
Tell me.
He's bugging out from Do the Right Thing. You ever see Do the Right Thing?
Oh, okay.
You ever see Do the
I've
Right
never
Thing?
seen Do the Right Thing, man. This is a Spike Lee joint, right?
That is a Spike.
At the help section in your Alexa app.
Tell me more, Alexa.
I really do need to unplug that. Giancarlo Esposito plays bugging out in Spike Lee's Do the Right Thing. He basically plays this like black nationalist character, but it's like when Jason and I talked about him on the review, he was like that guy that comes home from college and is just a douchebag. Just, he learned a thing in college and had to tell everybody about it.
About it. Right.
You come home from college a vegan and suddenly, I'm all about the animals, and you just want to punch him in the dick. That's Giancarlo Esposito, but black nationalist. Like the most famous thing that happens in that movie is he goes into the pizza place owned by the Italians, and he looks on the wall, and he was like, how are there no black people here? And Jason and I are like, that's not the first time you noticed that. Get the fuck out of here. But yeah, little Giancarlo Esposito is amazing as bugging out and Do the Right Thing. And it had been so long, and he wasn't Giancarlo Esposito at that time. He was just this actor. Like, so now you know him as from Breaking Bad and The Mandalorian and like all these great things that he's done. And then you go back, you're like, oh my God, that's like one of his early roles. He's so good. He's good in this too. I'm not sure, and I don't want to wrest control of the show from you because this is your show. I'm just here.
No, you go right ahead, sir. I'm glad you're hanging out with me. Talk to me, buddy.
But absolutely. What is about? I guess I'm thinking about episode 19, which is one of the ones you gave me for a homework assignment to watch.
Right.
And that's kind of like the boat episode from, I think, season 5 or 6. There's certain episodes of Homicide where it's kind of a one-room shoot. And and this was basically a one-room shoot. The entire episode is a hostage negotiation situation with his father and his 2 little kids. And
goes off the rails.
The whole show, the whole episode rests on Giancarlo Esposito's performance opposite the father who's taking his kids hostage. And he's so good. He's great in that episode. And you have him here with his Yaphet Kotto is his name?
Yep.
The actor? Okay.
Yep.
So you have him here opposite Yaphet, who I guess is his father, And they, over the course of the few episodes that I was able to watch, they have some really fun, great chemistry together. Speaking specifically about like Homicide, the movie, the scene where he's asleep and he's like having a dream about Yaphet, that might be like my favorite Yaphet scene ever, because he's such a straight shooter character, and he has to be silly in that scene. Where he's like last one out's a rotten egg, like
Yeah, so you do not. That is so strange to see coming from Al.
Yeah, Giardello. He's such a serious character, and to have him be like suddenly silly for just that one dream sequence was really, really fun. But all of that to say, you said you really didn't like the character, and I'm curious as to what about this character did you struggle with?
Now, remember, this was way back in '99. I think a lot of it was like, hey, we're sticking in these new characters. We're trying to find a replacement for Pendleton. That's exactly what they're trying to do, but you can't blame them. And his arc just kind of got annoying to me at one point back then. Mm-hmm. But again, like I said, upon the rewatch, I found myself struggling to go like, I was asking myself, why did I have such a problem with it? I shouldn't have had much of a problem with it. And when we get to I did my top 3 episodes of the season, and one of those is the episode we're talking about, which stars Giancarlo Esposito. So I obviously have learned the error of my ways.
Okay, so it was kind of like an initial reaction to it when you watched it maybe years ago, and then kind of watching it again, you're like, those feelings seems to have subsided. It's kind of like how I feel about certain bands, where like I heard this band when I was in high school. I'm like, everyone that listens to this band is a communist and a homosexual, and like 30 years later, I'm like, all right, I don't need to be an asshole about this.
Yeah, so, we could give this another shot. There isn't a reason to be so upset about it.
Yeah, all right. So you know what? So Counting Crows are not that bad.
I'll give them another go. So, like you said, this is this is G's son. This is Mike Giardello. He's a liaison for the FBI. He steps in. He's kind of helping out the homicide unit. He's going to be a regular on the show. There's definitely a bit of a strained relationship between him and his father. Since Al's wife and Mike's mom passed away. Episode 19 is a big turning point for this character, and we'll be discussing that a little bit more. We've kind of already talked a good bit about it later on when I do my top 3 episodes. Okay, next slide. Okay. You might recognize this guy.
Vanna. Call me Vanna though. Vanna.
Vanna. Next slide, Vanna.
Thank you.
So hey. I don't know if you consider this a trade up from our medical examiner, Juliana Cox, or not. Probably not. Remember?
No. Bring back Juliana Cox. Bring back all of Juliana Cox. All of it.
Right. All of it.
So here we get screen.
Yeah, this is our new chief medical examiner, George Griscom, I think is going to be his name. So he shows up every once in a while, but you might recognize him from other movies. That's for sure. I recognize him from Christmas with the Cranks. Played like a Santa Claus.
There's at least every generation. There's like 20 or so character actors. They're in everything. No one knows what their name is, and they may all be clones.
Right.
But
this is Austin Pendleton. That is Austin Pendleton. That is his name.
Okay, like Ron Howard's brother is a character actor who's in everything. You know who I'm talking about?
Clint Howard. Yes.
Yeah. He used to be in everything, right? Ron Howard's brother is fine. I believe that's how he's credited in movies. Ron Howard's brother.
Yes, he's the guy that plays it with his nipples in Little Nicky. Just putting that out there. Not this guy, but Clint Howard. I'm pretty sure. I have to look that up. Anyway, next. So let's
maybe
get
later. I was gonna say maybe later, maybe privately. Go ahead. Sorry.
That's all right. Take us into some familiar faces here. We are going to see next slide, Vanna. Tim Bayliss. We all know Tim Bayliss. He's been with us.
He was not recognizable with his shaggy Beatles hair. It took me. Now I watched this at work. Okay. As I'm evaluating people,
solid day in. Yeah, I got you. Hope that was on overtime.
Nope. So anyway, I'm watching. I watched Homicide the movie first, and then I went back and I watched the 3 episodes from season 7, and I honestly, no shit, didn't recognize him. I was like, "Who is this new character?"
Dude.
I'm like, "Oh my god,
Yeah.
that's Bayless with like shaggy homeless hair and a mustache,
right
underneath his loincloth."
Yeah, things changed for him between end of season 7 to the movie. That's for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, so Tim Bayless's self-discovery journey continues. He learns, or he at least tells one of his other detectives that he is actually bi-curious. Episode 13 starts an arc with him that will come to head in Homicide the movie, where that internet killer is broadcasting his kills. And we'll talk about that here in a few. In episode 16, he has a date with another cop. This is interesting. He has a date with another male cop who ends up standing him up because word starts getting around that Bayless is gay. And of course, this guy's gay, but he doesn't want the word to get out.
Sure.
And then Detective Gaffney, the guy that's above Giardello, or at least parallel to him somehow. Anyway, he's always been a dick. Not I said Detective Gaffney. It's goodness, I can't remember. Anyway, either way, Gaffney always gives Giardello a bunch of shit. Well, anyway, he comes down and he says, "Hey, Bayless, who has developed a Zen Buddhist like website, and also is teaching people." This is really like the internet age starting to come about. Like people are starting to make their own websites and stuff like that. Well, Bayless has one where he's talking about the Zen Buddhist lifestyle and, of course, homosexuality, things like that, and how that fits into his religion. And Gaffney comes in and he's like, "I want you to shut that shit down." So that is an interesting episode just to see how Bayless has to deal with his sexuality and the fact that he's got other people within his same career, his same job that are trying to hide it from others because they don't want people saying anything about what he's doing and what he's. And cop's supposed to be a big macho man. Bayless, was that at one point, and now he's definitely turned a new leaf. But episode 17. Something happens where he has to kill a man who he could just kill a man. He has to kill a man in self-defense.
It's something you can't understand.
That's true.
How Bayless can just kill a man.
Absolutely true. He has to kill a man in self-defense. So he tracks this guy down. He has to kill him in self-defense, and that starts we'll just call it a crisis in faith, okay? Because he's living this Zen Buddhist lifestyle, and now all of a sudden he starts questioning things. So that's kind of all I have on Bayless until we reach the end. Al Giardello, we talked about him already. Next slide, Vanna. A lot of this season here is just him dealing with the ins and outs of the unit, his relationship with his son, and at the end of the season, he's up for promotion, but he turns it down to stay in the homicide unit. So there's Al Giardello's arc throughout season 7. Next up, oh my goodness, Callie Thorne. Let's talk about her. Callie Thorne. I should put another slide in there with her.
Yeah, I was face. When you were like, here comes Callie Thorne, and I'm like, oh, here we go. Just,
here's the back of her head.
Yeah, like what is this shit here? Hang on, let me help you, Jesse. Let me help you with some visual aids of the Callie Thorne. I don't understand what's happening here. What's wrong with you, sir? Here we go.
I do not know.
Yeah, it's just all kinds of strangeness.
I was. So what I did here, we're going to do a twofer here. This is Ballard and Falzone. So that's kind of why I had both of them in the.
There she is.
There's
my girl.
I had that bookmarked. I don't know why it took you so long.
And that particular key was very sticky.
Right. Yeah. So Ballard and Falzone, they're kind of developing a relationship. They start dating. Giardello Al starts to find out that they're dating, and he makes it known, like, hey, this is against protocol, in his Giardello, Al Giardello way, where he's kind of like, he just kind of talks about how it would be unfortunate if somebody found out because that's against protocol. Maybe. Can
I tell you, I'm not even listening to you right now. I'm just.
You just go ahead and keep scrolling. This is my part's for the listeners. That part right there is for the viewers.
Absolutely. Please just address the audio listeners at this time.
So G makes them realize that it's against protocol. So what they do is they decide to keep it on down low. They don't let, they still date, but they're trying to keep it a secret. But their relationship has its ups and downs throughout the season. And that's about it. So, Callie Thorne.
Callie Thorne.
My goodness.
How are we not doing an entire TV party dedicated to just Callie Thorne shows?
I will. Yeah. Well, you know what? 2023 is right around the corner.
By the time we get done with this, sure.
All right, next slide, Ollie. I mean, Vanna.
Hang on, let me put this back in here. All right, so do you want to talk about the other? So you put this slide up. I have problems with this slide already because you were like, let's talk about Callie Thorne, and we get the side and back of her head, but this other character you haven't even addressed.
No, I did. You weren't listening that whole time. I talked about Falzone and Ballard's relationship.
Oh, okay.
That's Falzone. And not the hairy guy in the back. I don't know what his arc is. No, I just know he runs the gym that Ballard.
Now you're talking about this baby-chested man here. This
I want to talk about this scene though. Okay,
this soft, smooth baby chest that we got going on here, opposite Callie, the voluptuous Callie Thorne.
My notes specifically for this scene when this happened. Okay, so Falzone is like parading around like a peacock. He's about ready to put some boxing gloves on and show off in front of Ballard in the boxing ring, right? And she eats it up. My notes were get a mop because she is like, I mean, she is all about the
I can't even do the purr now. I gotta do like dolphin sounds or some shit, like whale call.
She is hot and bothered in that scene. And it's so funny because you know they make sure to show you that she enjoys every little bit of what she's seeing in that ring.
I mean, look, but if you were Callie Thorne, would you not enjoy old baby chest over there? I mean, come on, you gotta give him a little bit of a, you know.
Sure. But yeah, they're like I said, they're
this fucking guy. Oi.
Oh, good old Munch. All right.
Okay. So can I lead off this discussion of Munch? Because you know me, I always find something to relate to. I was watching this before we started the show tonight. Specifically, it's I believe episode 22, and he goes into a bar, and he's talking about how, and he's comparing sex with, I guess, his fiance to baseball.
Yeah.
I mean, is there for two old fuckers like us, is there not a more resonant scene? where he's talking to, I can't forget what's the bartender in that scene who was a homicide detective. What's his name again? What's his nuts from season 5 of The Wire?
Hold up now. I don't know who you're talking about. Which one? Are you talking about Lewis?
Yeah.
Is he talking to Lewis or Meldrick Lewis?
He's doesn't matter.
Okay. Doesn't matter. He's talking to a detective.
He's talking to one of the homicide detectives. Hang on. One of our fans here, a big fan of my purring. I'll just leave that there for now. Hi.
Nice.
Walked in on something I did not need to know.
What we've walked in on a lot of things you didn't need to know about. What are you referring to specifically?
That you have fans that enjoy your porn.
Podcast. I have fans that enjoy my podcast. Fans that I enjoy my porn are a whole different thing, Jonas. But I'm talking about the podcast.
Absolutely.
Oh, purring is what you said.
Yes.
Oh, yeah. Yes, I have fans that enjoy my purring as well. Why have fans just enjoy me? I'm a character.
I feel disturbed by how they like your porn.
Purr.
Kids gonna have nightmares, man.
Purr.
I am speech. I am the welcomest clown face.
Okay.
Nightmares. Nightmares.
He is disturbed by people who like my purr. Arr. Anyway, I can stop doing that for a moment. So back to Munch. So Munch goes into the bar. He's talking to the detective who is now a bartender. And he's like, and he starts talking about like, hey, we weren't going to do premarital sex, but we did it anyway. And here's what happened. And he's talking about like premature ejaculation or like just like coming too quickly. But he's comparing it to like, again, he's doing baseball euphemisms to gently talk about this.
Because this is NBC, by the way.
So also, look, and I think this is the point that I'm trying to make. What he says basically is that before they even had intercourse, he finished, and and it was embarrassing and heartbreaking. And then he was like, that was my first at bat. And then the other guy goes, "Well, you still got 2 more at bats." And he was like, "Not at my age, you don't." I wanted to throw myself on the floor and cry. I was like, "Oh, this poor man." I can't remember what it was we were talking about like, it was when Sean and I talked about X. That's what it was. X deals with, to some degree, I mean, it's a slasher movie and a great one at that, but X also deals with like the loss of virility, the loss of one's sexual identity due to just age, due to time. Time steals all of the things that makes us people. And it's a very polite way of saying you get older, you can't do the shit you used to do. And sex is one of those things. But your brains, your emotions, your sense of self, you still want those things. It just becomes harder to do. So, the brain wants it, but the body is not helpful or able. And that's what X dealt with. And so Sean and I had spent a fair amount of time discussing that in the review of X from a few weeks ago. And I was thinking about
I just listened to that review on Monday, by the way. It's funny you mention that. Yeah.
Yeah, thank you. But so I was thinking about that with Munch here, about they took a moment to sort of recognize that, as you get older, these are things that happen. And, some people cope with it well. Some people find other things to focus on because, sex is just not as much a part of their life anymore. And some people handle it badly, and they don't really go too much further with it. But it was, I think whether you're going through those things or not, certainly everyone can relate to aging. And if nothing else, that was my takeaway from that scene. And as much as Richard Belzer annoys the living shit out of me, I think he did a great job with that particular bit of monologuing and acting on the stool. I was just curious to see what you thought of Munch's premature ejaculation monologue.
Yeah, I think that in my notes, I specifically wrote down the part in which I don't remember if it's that same episode or not, but he mentions how he was supposed to consummate the marriage. And he couldn't. He
that's what I'm saying. That's that scene.
It says, see, okay, so this is after they got married. So yeah, that's in my notes here. Munch and Billy Lou get married, and he's supposed to. I mean, Billy Lou's been the hotsy totsy for Munch / Stu at the Waterfront, which is the bar that the detectives own.
Who plays Billy Lou?
I do not know who's plays her. I don't have her listed here. You might have to look that one up.
Nope, I got
but
it.
she's definitely around Munch's age, but she also has the history that we learn about this girl throughout the series is that, I think at one point she was a stripper. There is an episode in this season where Munch goes to, I think, confront her ex-boyfriend, and maybe it wasn't even an ex-boyfriend. It was some like jerk. No, it was her friend's ex-boyfriend. Anyway, this guy's a real jerk, and he goes, "Yeah, I'm here to talk to you about Billy Lou." And the ex-boyfriend guy goes like, "You talking about the lady that plays the violin with her boobs out all the time?" But anyway, she's kind of got this risque personality to her, and you kind of wonder if she's actually going to end up with Munch, because there's some feelings for Stu throughout the series as well. But anyway, she ends up marrying Munch. And she's definitely, Munch he's marrying up. We'll just put it that way.
I bet he is.
Hey, yeah. Here's my notes for Munch.
Oh,
okay. Starts dating the bartender Billy Lou. Breaks / sprains his penis at one point. We learn in episode 5.
Who hasn't been there when you sprain your penis? I mean, really, in your
we know way too
parties,
much.
who doesn't sprain a penis every once in a while?
Way too much about Munch's sexual escapades throughout this season. It's just way too
not
much.
Enough, in my opinion. If I had known, I'd have watched the whole season.
He's still the conspiracy theorist. That doesn't change. Obviously, he's definitely like solid in that role, and that's about all I have for Munch. So,
right.
Next up,
what's my name?
It's going to be our good. We got We got the fans, the purring happening here, huh? So
this show got infinitely better with fan interaction. Hey, you want me to turn the slide? You got to call me by my name.
Vanna, please.
Thank you.
There we go. Meldrick Lewis.
Yeah, that's the character he was talking to in the bar.
Okay. All right. Yeah, Meldrick. So Meldrick is partnered with Renee at the beginning of this season. And of course, who doesn't have the hots for Renee Shepherd? I mean, throughout the season, they actually tease her because she was like Miss whatever county that she grew up in, because she definitely looks like a beauty contestant, a beauty pageant contestant. She's a hot lady. So he's got a partner with her, and he goes throughout this whole thing. I think at this slide, actually, he's telling Bayless, hey, we're keeping it professional. So he's trying his best to keep it professional. I don't think there's a relationship there, as far as there's definitely some chemistry, sexual chemistry, but it's not like they are dating or anything like that.
Right.
Renee ends up catching a bad beatdown, like in one of these episodes. So her and Meldrick go out on a call, and he goes around the back while the guys go out the front and catch her, and they just start whipping the crap out of her. I mean, and one of them takes off with her gun, but she grabs onto the leg of one of these guys so he can't get away. Meldrick makes his way around and, of course, puts the guy on the ground and arrests him, but she gets messed up. So that's an arc for Renee and Meldrick, because Meldrick ends up not wanting to partner with her, or is afraid to partner with her because of what happened from further episodes throughout the season. He's like kind of standoffish. He's like, doesn't want her to come back, be on the street, kind of like the Pembleton thing, but more along the lines of, can a woman do it? Can a woman actually do this job? And Meldrick he's on the fence with that. This definitely leads to some tensions between Lewis and Shepherd throughout the season. So that's really kind of all Meldrick does. So next slide, Vanna. All right. We have Detective Stivers here. Not a whole lot of notes for her on season 7. We got, when I see her and throughout the season, girl power comes to mind, because she's definitely involved in some of the more powerful moments for the feminine parts of this cast. She's also someone that is down to earth that other detectives can talk to. So whenever somebody, like especially the relationship stuff, comes up with Falzone and Ballard, one of them is confiding in Detective Stivers here. And then I think it's when Kellerman comes back in I think it's episode 8 and 9, which I'll talk about that here in a second. But anyway, she gets to finally lay into Kellerman after all that crap from season 6, where Kellerman shot Luther and puts her under the gun to kind of lie under oath, or not under oath, but basically lie on her report. She finally gets her day in the sun to really lay into Kellerman. All right, next slide, man. Now, here we go. Here's Stu Garrity.
Judge Phelan from The Wire.
That's right. That's right. Me and Mindy are starting a rewatch of season 1 so we can get prepared for next month. And sure enough, he was on the first episode.
I want to say, I want to say to our fans, well, next month is The Corner. We got 2 more. We got another month to go. I think it's August. Is the first
I read that wrong then.
Yeah, no. The corner is next, and then The Wire. But for all of our fans out there, to really get the impact of this show, and just because I think everybody should watch The Wire. Currently on HBO Max, or if you have just HBO subscription, go find The Wire season 1 through 5. Watch The Wire, then you too can be a part of this discussion. All right, go ahead, Justin.
You did see my post about The Wire podcast, right?
I did. I want to check that out now.
Yeah, they only have 2 episodes. One's the intro, which is like 4 minutes long, and the second one is like a 20-minute Method Man interviewing David Simon. So,
perfect.
And then that just dropped June 2nd. So June 9th is probably going to be tomorrow. Is probably going to be some more another episode that'll drop.
Yeah, I'm gonna add that to my pod. I'm gonna add that to my podcast list. All right, Judge Phelan, go.
So Garrity, season 7 starts. Garrity's separated from his wife, so he's going through some tough times. He always ends up in some of the fun, I won't call it fun, more interesting discussions about racial issues in Baltimore. There are definitely discussions about that throughout this season, and Stu's usually centerpiece in that. He's the Irishman. Of course, he's older. He's got his views. And he definitely goes rounds with Mike Giardello at one point, where they're just kind of bouncing things off each other about the racial tensions in the city and what's going on. Episode 12 is a standout piece, and it becomes one of the ones I'm going to talk about in my top 3 episodes, but it centers on Garrity and his, we'll just say his past. So I'll talk a little bit more about that here in a second. He begins to drink a little heavier. He's separated from his wife. He starts drinking a little bit more, and he still has a thing for Billy Lou, which, you could tell he's got feelings for. And that, it doesn't work out so well for him. But
really, who doesn't have feelings for Billy Lou in this show?
Billy Lou. But yeah, there you go. That is Stu Garrity. Next slide, Vanna. Episode 8 and 9. Reed Diamond. Gosh, I told you that he was the most annoying character for me to try and get through in seasons 5 and 6.
Right.
To try, but he returns. Episode 8 and 9. Mike Kellerman, PI, is the name of the episodes. He's now a private investigator. He works the case of a dead infant, sometimes with and without the help of his friends from Homicide. And at the end of things, he's able to kind of bury the hatchet with some of his old work buddies, including Falzone, which is interesting because Falzone was always up his ass about what happened. And they even drew their guns on each other at one point in season 6. So, Kellerman coming back, he just kind of is there to, like I said, bury the axe.
I wonder how much of his presence. I wonder how much of his presence on the show is a studio note. They obviously the show is very inclusive because it's supposed to represent the ethnic demographics of Baltimore. But I gotta wonder how much of NBC executives listen. Baltimore may be mostly black, but our audience is mostly white, and we would like a pretty white boy on this show because the rest of these trolls, it's just not going to cut it. We're not getting the sweeps, audience that we need here. Get the pretty blonde guy back, and David Simon and the writing crew is we fucking wrote him off the show. He's a bastard. Narratively, he's done, and they're like, if you want your show to continue, he's not. So
look at his pretty face.
Look at that pretty. Look at that pretty face. Just look at him.
He's definitely. I mean, there's no hint to the. Thank you very much. Full screen ad. There's no hints that he's still suicidal or anything like that. It seems like he's got past that, and he's just kind of working private investigator work. He's still a good cop, or at least at heart, he's a good cop. He's trying to be a good cop. So. That's all I have for Mike Kellerman. So that is really right there. That's kind of the synopsis for the season. What we're going to get into next is our guest stars. Now, do you recognize that man?
That would be Tommy Lee.
No, it would not. That would be Joe Perry. That is Joe Perry from
They
Aerosmith.
Are the same person.
I would say Tommy Lee's probably a little bit younger at this time in 99. So 98, 99, whenever they were
Joe Perry of Aerosmith. Yes.
Joe Perry of Aerosmith. Next up, I can't remember what episode I think it's a pretty early on. And
oh my God,
you recognize this guy.
Yeah, from Oz, baby. Of course, everybody else knows him from Law and Order Special Victims Unit, but fuck that show. Yep. Oz, baby. Yeah.
Christopher Maloney shows up here in a 2-parter, episode 6 and 7. He's a bounty hunter. He's got a group of bounty hunters. One of his bounty hunters accidentally kills the wrong guy. They're going after a target.
Well, wait a minute now, because that's good because in Oz he was a booty hunter.
Oh, good. Bounty booty. Get it, folks? Give another purr there, Mark.
Do you
Give
get it?
Purr. There you go. So that
waiting for my son to do another run-in.
I am disturbed, father.
Whack me with a chair. Enough with the fucking purring already. And just walk away.
I am disturbed.
So
yeah, we get to see him there. It was neat to see him in a Homicide show. He's not playing Stabler in any way, but he plays very far apart from Stabler. He's kind of got this accent going, definitely flexing his acting skills in the 2 parts that he's in. So it was good to see him. There we go. Glad you're still watching.
We appreciate you.
We do. All right,
I'm waiting for
next up,
somebody
Vanna.
else. I'm waiting for somebody else to get in on the act, and I'm just people just like putting emojis on the screen. Like, wait, why
Just
are all these
nothing
eggplants
but.
here? All right, moving on.
Oh,
She
look
looks
at this.
mildly familiar. Yeah.
Yeah, this is Jenna Malone. She shows up in episodes
That's
8 and 9,
right.
the whole Kellerman PI thing. So
Young
Jenna Malone
Malone.
makes an appearance. Yep. And I think this case, she ends up, the way it starts out is her and her boyfriend are at a hotel, and they leave the hotel, and the next morning, like, a guy goes out into a field near the motel and finds, unfortunately, a dead child.
Like you
She
find in
had a
fields.
baby. Yeah, she had a baby, and they end up trying to figure out if the baby was dead. Their story is that the baby was dead when they had it, and of course, it was a secret pregnancy. Her mom and dad had no idea if she was pregnant. But it's a really good episode. Couple parts, I should say.
Mhm.
Next
All
up,
right.
Vanna. You recognize this guy? That's
Oh,
J.D. Williams.
Bodie. Yeah, Bodie from The Wire.
That's right. He
Also,
shows-
Kenny. Wait, Kenny from Oz.
Okay.
Sorry, my favorite Kenny bit from Oz. It's real quick. Is not an actual Kenny line. It's Adebisi, like trying to get not Beecher, trying to get McManus in trouble and get him thrown out, get him fired. And he was like, "You don't understand. McManus touched Kenny's penis." So cracks me up the way he says that. Just so matter of factly with that African accent. He touched his
that's
penis. Yeah,
That's
little Bodie from The Wire.
Yeah. He's, I think, a suspect in a murder here, dealing with
This motherfucker is in everything ever shot on the East Coast ever. He's in
You're
like every
probably
episode of Law and Order. He's in Homicide, The Wire, Oz. This guy was the most working actor that no one knows
Right.
the name of or who the hell I'm talking about everywhere.
J.D. Williams, ladies and gentlemen.
Yeah, hell of an actor.
All right. Okay, so that brings the guest stars to an end. Next up, we're going to be talking about my favorite top 3 episodes here of this season. And up first is episode 12. This is called The Same Coin. So we already talked about there's a little bit of a love triangle going on between Stu, Munch, and Billy Lou.
That certainly seems what's happening in this picture.
Mike is not doing anything here. Mike is trying to hold him back, not restrain him. Well, yeah,
They're
we'll say he's
cuddling,
definitely
man.
restraining him.
That to me looks like cuddling.
So this episode opens up where Stu's having flashbacks. There's a murder that happens where there's a military man that ends up dying. He recognizes a tattoo as being somebody that had fought in I believe it's in Nam. But he starts having flashbacks. He starts having some personal issues dealing with his military service because it emotionally scarred him. It brings him into direct conflict with Munch. This is why this is interesting. Munch is always the conspiracy theorist. There's actually a part in this episode where Munch has to go into the FBI building, I think, with Mike. And he's like, of course, he can't, like, his skin crawls just being inside of some big government building. And he's giving everybody a hard time because he thinks there's a big conspiracy, this big conspiracy, that. So he has all this problem with, like, federal authority keeping tabs on everybody. That's one of the big things that Munch has. Well, anyway, so Munch and Stu kind of get into it because Munch gets wind of Stu's Vietnam service and the fact that he was discharged, I think dishonorably, I think is what they say. So he has the government, Mike, pull Stu's military records, specifically just to get under Stu's skin. And then at the end of the episode, Stu gets wind of it. He's pissed. He is so pissed. He walks over to the waterfront, and all he does that whole episode, when he walks into the waterfront, is just eyeball Munch. Like, everybody's talking to him, he will not look away from Munch. And he's kind of like he's conversing with everybody, but he just keeps his eyes on. And finally, it boils over, and he's trying to get Munch to come around the bar, and they're going to go they're going to have a hand-to-hand, fist-to-face kind of deal here. Well,
really thought that was going in another direction, and I started thinking about Robert, like, who's got 2 free hands on an open weekend?
So what we find out is that Stu actually was discharged dishonorably because he stood up to his major, whoever, captain that was out there and directing him to do things. When they went into this village, he was telling people to kill these innocent civilians. He said, no, I'm not going to do it. And therefore they got him. The captain's like, okay, you're done. And I found it very interesting to see that how much, just to get under his skin, went against every single value he had. You know, he just to get under Stu's skin, he went and used the government to do exactly what he hates the government do. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. What the government does.
What that government be doing.
I should be reading instead of talking. He hates.
Jesse, what did you think of this episode? It was good.
Stay on script, Starcher.
Hey,
so
you know what? Since I interrupted you, let me continue and say, you know, what my favorite Munch bit from this entire series of the stuff that we're reviewing tonight. I want to say maybe it was episode 13. I was trying to remember what point in the day I watched this, but they're playing the CD-ROM game. Which, by the way, this show is so old. How old is this show? That they're like, it was an amazing thing that you could play a video game on a CD-ROM on a computer. Like, this was high-tech shit. And Munch, very prescient, very forward-thinking, is like, you don't understand. Video games are what's going to make us docile and easy to control by the government. And everyone's like, shut up. And then 2022.
And then what does he do?
And then
what does he do? Munch sits down and grabs the joystick, and he starts playing like right after that.
And I was gonna say, like, his whole thing is he's not wrong. You know, there's all of these distractions to keep you from focusing on real world problems and gathering together to make serious change. Meanwhile, here in 2022, we have Twitter. You know,
right?
They won. I don't know if anyone knows that or not, but you know, the people trying to distract us. Yeah, game over. We're done.
Here's the thing. I went into that scene and my thoughts were like, there's no way this squad room could even afford a PC that could run a game that looks like that in 97, 98, whatever. It's like, come on. Even. I mean, they're sitting there playing. They got a controller in their hand while the VCR is playing this tape.
There's no way there was no way that was like government issue. They stole that off a crack dealer and just plugged it in. They're like, this is from the evidence room. We don't really need it for evidence. So we're playing it.
All right. Next slide.
Next slide, too.
Vanna.
Thank you.
Please. Oh, yeah. All right.
We need to process this episode.
I'm ready.
We need to take
I'm ready
here.
I'll break it down. I've got the wiki description here. Let me do that first, and then we'll talk about it. So I can read this one. A man takes his two children, son and stepdaughter, hostage, shoots and wounds a cop when the quick response team arrives, and then demands to negotiate with Mike. Mike learns that the man has acted out of desperation over being laid off and his wife leaving him. When his wife breaks through the police line, he shoots wildly out the window and kills her. He's shooting, but he's not intending, I don't think, to kill her. He accidentally kills her, but he has no idea that happened.
Right.
A fact that Mike works desperately to hide from him. The man offers to trade his gun for a pizza, but breaks the deal and lets his stepdaughter go before killing his son and himself too quickly for the QRT to react. Mike berates himself for missing a chance to save both children, even if it would have led to the man being killed by the QRT. So at this point, and with this episode right here, it's a big turning point for Mike, but I don't want to talk about that here. Let's go ahead. You said we got to process it.
So, and I actually kind of blinked and missed this. Fill me in. Is it a shooter that takes the kid out, or is it the dad that took the kid out?
It's the dad. The dad kills his son, and then kills himself.
Okay. So we talked about episode structure and narrative, that this is one of those not really a single shot, but for those watching, if you've ever watched an episode of television that kind of takes place in one or two different settings, and it's a lot of long takes, there's no cuts, it's very dialogue driven. That's a lot of this episode. It's a lot of it's a lot of the dad and Giancarlo Esposito talking, and Giancarlo Esposito having to do hostage crisis and negotiation. There's this really scene. There's a great little bit of this where they don't want to open fire. There's kids in there, and they don't want to hit the kids, so they really do have to coax him out. This whole episode really resonated with me, in that the father, working in the mental health field, I've heard people talk the way he talks. I've heard people do what he's doing. He's paranoid. He's untrustworthy. He's demanding. He's entitled. He's frustrated. He feels. It's funny. We've talked over the last couple of years over, how did we get to Trump, and talking about like the dissatisfaction among middle class white men, especially, but white people in general, and feeling like they are right or wrong. And I am not addressing their grievances. I am stating that they existed. Feeling not represented in the culture, not represented in government, just, right or wrong, feeling like the world they knew and felt they had a degree of control over was drifting away from them and reacting violently in many cases. And seeing Trump as a way back to the normalcy that they once treasured, that they once felt comfortable in. And this is 98, 97. So we're talking, the Clinton years. And certainly the world, but even if you think about what was happening during the Clinton administration, NAFTA, GATT, I believe, was the other one. There was a lot of talk, right or wrong. And again, I don't really want to get into it. There's a lot of mythology around this that I've written about, but jobs going overseas, Mexico, the South Park joke, they took our jobs, people feeling displaced, the idea of the American dream slipping out of people's hands. You can't be just a high school educated person doing a labor job and take care of a family anymore and be able to buy a house and a car. That world is gone. That sort of thing. And he is sort of an analog for all of that. And it's not that I sympathize with his point so much. I sympathize with the fact that he had a point, that he was looking for redress. He was looking to state his grievances in a very public way, and the only way he thought anyone would listen to him with a gun, which no one will listen to me unless I shoot someone, is as resonant in 1998 as it is in 2022. You know what I mean? Right. It's like, this is almost a timeless episode. And then the tragedy and the performance therein of Giancarlo Esposito dealing with the fact that he killed himself and the child, and the balls on Homicide to kill a kid in primetime television. Because right. Robert Winfrey and I have talked at length about how Hollywood has no balls and won't do stuff like that. And so the kids and dogs survive nuclear, holocausts. But they straight up shot a kid on television in this show. It broke my heart, but it was artfully done. And it's just probably one of the single best episodes of television I've ever watched.
Yeah, it was a really, really powerful piece of television. There is a lot of, I talk to people who unfortunately get laid off all the time. That's just the start of this guy. That's just what started. He gets laid off. His wife left him, took the kids, was planning on taking the kids. And just like you said, the only way he could get somebody to actually just hear him out is to grab a gun and start waving it. This episode, see, here's the thing. This episode, I don't think this man intended it for it, obviously, to get as far as it did. At the beginning of this episode, you're certain that there is hope that Mike's going to be able to talk this guy out, or at least save the kids. You are pretty sure it's going to have a happy ending. But what ends up happening,
balls that it doesn't. The balls on the writing, bravo, David Simon and company, for being brave in the face of ongoing cowardice in Hollywood to go that far.
Yeah, very good. I mean, that's why I pointed it out to you. I was like, if you're going to watch anything from this season, you need to watch the two that lead up to the movie, and you need to watch this episode, because this episode is absolutely the best this season has to offer. So
by far.
yeah, I mean, yeah, it's deserved at the top 3 here.
All right,
All
now
right.
let's talk about porn.
Yeah, goodness, snuff films
right.
on the
Right.
internet.
Everyone-
This is
this-
such a novel concept, but
The
it's
serious
like,
part of the show is over. Like, forget about Trump, forget about white grievance. Let's talk about bondage, what we all came here for.
what a
Good old-
again, like I said, this is 99, 98, 99. They're showing
Mhm.
this. These are people watching snuff films or films broadcast live on the internet. Now, that was, that's a big stretch for back then, but it's obviously
Sure.
brand new.
Mhm.
But anyway, here we have this guy. It's supposed to be a big production, and then it turns out people are actually watching. They think it's fake initially, but then they start to realize that there are deaths that are happening, and Baltimore
Right.
cops are homicide detectives are trying to catch this killer before he does it again. And of course, he just kind of leads them on, and he actually is playing with the police at one point. Can you catch me? Can you catch me? He's spoofing IP addresses. I mean, my God, this guy is smart. So anyway, I'll read from the wiki here. Our killer here, Luke Ryland, he gets caught in episode 13. Homicide.com is the name of that episode. So he gets caught. And he has to go to trial. Well, trial keeps getting delayed and delayed and delayed. And then finally the lawyer's like, hey, my client's been waiting for trial for 120 days. And it turns out there's a legal loophole that, okay, well, I guess you're released and you can go free. So the killer goes back out on the loose. Now, this infuriates Bayless.
Yeah.
Bayless is so upset, he ends up pushing District Attorney Danvers down the steps at the courthouse. I mean, he's mad because this happened. He knows this guy's a killer. They had him dead to rights. They couldn't believe that this murderer is going to get away. He killed multiple people. So shortly after, Ryland taunts Bayless with his plans to continue his murders in New Orleans. So this guy's like, hey, I'm leaving. Bayless shows up and confronts him. He's like, no, I'm out of here. I'm leaving. I'm going to New Orleans. Bayless quietly packs his things and leaves the squad room without an explanation. At the end of the series, Lewis and Shepard respond to a call of a body in an alley, and there lies Luke Ryland, our killer, shot and dead. As they begin to investigate their conversation, go ahead.
Who's the actor playing Luke? He looks familiar. Where do I know him from?
I don't know. I do not have him. I do not have him on my notes here.
Okay.
No idea. But as noted here in the wiki, as they begin to investigate, their conversation mirrors an exchange between Lewis and Cressetti in Gone for Good, season 1, ending with the same line, "That's what's wrong with this job. It ain't got nothing to do with life." So the big point of this episode is that Bayless most likely killed this man and then resigned from Homicide. So that was how we ended season 7, man. Bayless resigns. He's taken on a vigilante, he took on a vigilante vibe. He did what justice to this man is what he felt like he did. And he decided he couldn't be a homicide cop anymore. So that's the end of season 7. That's the end of my top 3 episodes. But I don't know if you want to say anything before we get into Homicide, the movie. Like you said, is the pretty much most likely the finale. But just imagine, Homicide, the movie, I think comes around in, I want to say 2000. So luckily, there's not that much time that separates the end of season 7 to Homicide, the movie. There is definitely some time that passes narratively because we jumped to a completely, there had to have been at least maybe 2 or 3 years that passed. But anyway, season 7 ends. Bayless, who was once this doughy-eyed homicide detective, comes into the force. He comes into the squad room, and he wants to learn everything. He wants to catch these killers, and then he ends up becoming one himself. I mean, that's an arc, dude. It really is an arc for this guy. When you look at it from season 1 to season 7, Tim Bayless, one of the central characters of this piece, went from homicide detective to murderer. So there you go. What do you think?
I just I only want to address the final scene between Bayless and Ryland that leads into Homicide the movie, because the big finale in Homicide the movie, and we can just get into talking about this, is Andre Braugher and Bayless, Pembleton and Bayless talking against the fence, and they're talking sort of like having a philosophical discussion about when to use your gun and when not to, you know, when to use lethal force and all of that. And Bayless is, you know, and for Pembleton, it's very clear. It's as clear as the day is long. But for Bayless, he's like, but you're not right about that. You don't know what you're talking about. And I've killed a guy. And then the whole scene is just that. It just becomes Bayless and Pembleton going back and forth over the fact that he killed Rylan. And did I miss it at the end there? Because like they show him killing him in the movie, but I don't recall seeing it in the episode. And I was watching fairly closely, so I'm like, did I miss something?
No, you don't see it.
Okay. Okay.
You just see him confront.
Mhm.
You see him confront Ryland, and then I think he goes to apologize to District Attorney Danvers.
Mhm.
And the next day, he's just packing his stuff up. And you're like,
Right.
oh, wow, okay, he must have become so disenfranchised with what's going on in the homicide unit that he's decided to
Mhm.
quit because justice hasn't been served. Well, ladies and gentlemen, Ryland lays at the bottom or at the back of an alley dead, and
Right.
Bayless served that justice right up. So, no, it's inferred. It's not a thing
Okay.
that you know going into Homicide,
Well,
the movie.
kind of starting from the back and working all the way back to the front of the movie. That scene between Pembleton and Bayless is outstanding. I mean, Andre Braugher, we know, is an outstanding actor, and he really carries that scene. But there's so much subtext, there's so much drama, there's so much give and take in between those two actors, and all they're doing is arguing over whether or not Bayless actually killed a guy. That's all. It just sort of deteriorates into that, and it's a marvelously well written and well acted scene, and I really want to draw special attention to it because a lot has been argued on this network and, you know, throughout podcast culture and nerd culture over what constitutes good and what constitutes bad as opposed to just personal preference. You know, I like is good, and people tend to conflate the two. And this is an example of well written drama. If you need to like study, you know, anatomy of a scene, look no further than Pembleton and Bayless discussing his execution of Ryland. It's gorgeous drama. It really is. And those two, it's almost like a wrestling match. They don't touch each other, obviously, but it's, you know, they are maneuvering around each other through the use of dialogue. It's just beautiful. And, you know, I always talk about like, what are the things that motivate me to keep doing this? It's stuff like that. And I wouldn't have known it was there. It's this little beautiful Easter egg out there in the, you know, in the content universe that I didn't even know about until you told me, go watch Homicide, the movie, you won't be sorry. And I wasn't. I do now for a criticism, since I've gushed over something, because I can't be totally positive. So was it season 6, the finale, as they shoot up the squad room?
Right. Yeah. Junior bunk.
Okay. I'm getting a little tired of Homicide sort of resting their laurels on the just shoot everything in the fucking room. Jesus Christ, is getting a little overused here. We open a Homicide the unit and they shoot Yaphet Kotto. Like, come on, man. Stop. I feel like every other episode, after a while, they're like, it's the one thing people are paying attention to is when we kill a cop on this show. So,
Right. Yeah.
I don't know how much Law and Order you've watched, but they don't kill cops all that often on that show.
No, it's
Homicide,
not.
After a while, it was every other episode.
Yeah. People were getting,
It's like fucking Janeway blowing up the Enterprise.
To do a quick synopsis here of the movie, G's running for mayor. So, like I said, time had to have passed because you're not going to just be like, okay, is that a whale? That's a whale.
That's a whale. I don't know, man.
You mentioned a whale at one point. I'm pretty sure. I'm pretty sure you mentioned a whale at one point.
That might be a reference a little late, you know, but you know, hey, I'll take the late hit. I said I don't know how else to react to this. Like, what do I do? Whale song or something? I believe that's what that's a reference to. So bravo.
There we go.
Well done.
Don't encourage this man to make any more noises. Let's stop doing that. I don't want to hear a whale song. I've got enough purring for tonight.
I've put enough more stupid crap on screen.
So like I said, time's passed. G's running for mayor, and he gets shot. He's in critical condition. So as the title says right here, the one case so important, every detective is back. So they bring back just about everybody you could think.
They brought back everybody. They brought back. They went into the future and brought back people from fucking Generation Kill.
It's crazy.
John Bernthal's in this. Everybody's
amazing.
in this.
That's amazing. Yeah. So Mike, who I think he just got tired of the politics of being in the FBI. He's now a beat cop. He's actually patrolling the streets now. So Mike Giardello on the streets. Stu Garrity is actually in G's old place. He's the lieutenant of the homicide unit. Ned Beatty comes back as Bolander. We didn't watch any of those episodes with Ned Beatty between 5, 6, and 7.
Hard for me to see Ned Beatty in this role because all I can think about is this character from Deliverance. Forever will Ned Beatty be running from hillbillies in the Tennessee woods with his ass on fire. Fire.
Munch, he's in New York now. He's doing the Law and Order thing. So Kay Howard, which we hadn't seen Kay since season 5. Kay is actually she's still working. She's out there still working. I don't know if she's doing robbery or whatever, but she gets involved. Bayless, he's, like I said, he resigned. He's out fly fishing, but he gets the call and he's like, okay, I got to go help out my buddy Al. And then Pimbleton, who is teaching something. I assume it's something law related because he is a brilliant man. He gets the call and Pimbleton's back. So he hops in on this. Kellerman gets involved. Now, one of the key things that we definitely need to mention, I don't have a slide for him, but Jason Priestley shows up in this movie.
And Jason Priestley beats the shit out of a homeless man. I was like, oh, Brandon, no.
I know. Yeah, just seeing him on the screen.
Because it made me start to think, like, Jesus Christ, when was Beverly Hills 90210? And I'm like, I was in high school during that. I think the Beverly Hills 90210 was about to hit their last episode, I think in 99, 2000. I remember me and my wife watching the final episode of that. It's either 2000. I think it's right around there. So that's happening as this movie's filming. For those that don't know, Jesse and his wife have been together since they were like 12. So you're gonna
close.
So when
14.
When you hear so me and my wife were watching Ghostbusters in theater, why? When me and my wife went to see Star Wars in 1977, that's why because he's been married since the year of the
first. Our first movie was Wayne's World 2 in the theaters together.
I really thought our first movie was a silent film.
No jokes there. I'm being real up front.
Wayne's World, got it.
So anyway. We get they're doing this investigation. Like I said, Jason Priestley, who's a buddy for Gaffney, by the way. Gaffney comes in, he's being an asshole like he always is. This is real interesting because the culprit who ends up shooting G is a guy who's upset about the fact that Al is running on a platform of legalizing drugs. And because his son died of a drug overdose, he fashions this video camera with a gun in it and shoots Giardello, and that's what they end up finding out is that it was all a politically motivated shooting. So all right, I want to talk about just real quick. I want to mention how you talked about how G actually does wake up. He does wake up, even though he have that dream sequence. He does wake up and talk to Mike for a little bit. So G looks like he's Al looks like he's actually recovering here a little bit from getting shot. And as the we talk about the scene that happened before they go to the waterfront, which is Bayless versus Pimbleton. And I want to touch on that real quick. What you said, Bayless is just looking for absolution. He says that to Pimbleton. He's like, absolve me, Frank. I did this. Absolve me. Take me in. Put me in handcuffs and walk me down. I need this. He basically wanted Pimbleton to take that off his chest. And Pimbleton's like, I don't need to be here for this. I don't need to hear this from you. These guys have been partners for years. Now, granted, they weren't for a little while here towards the end of things, but they have been friends and partners for years. And Bayless has always looked up to Pimbleton, always. And he's just looking for some type of absolution. And at one point says that he wants to kill himself. Put a pin in that. So, all right. Fast forward to the waterfront. Everybody's celebrating. This is the bar, the detective zone. All the detectives show up there. They're celebrating. They're having a great time. They've caught the culprit. G seems to be in recovery. Then J.H. Brody walks in, the documentarian from season 6 that we talked about. And he looks something's up with him, and everybody's like, what's going on? And he says, Al died. Al had an aneurysm, and G's dead. So at the end of this movie, Al Giardello has died, but that's not where it all ends. We then get this afterlife scene, which I don't know if you have any commentary on that or not. I mean, granted, it's only like maybe 5-10 minutes, but G shows up at the squad room. It's really eerie how they do that. As Pimbleton and I think Mike meet for the first time, and they're kind of walking out of the squad room while G walks right in between them. And of course, you know, he can't see them, they can't see him. And then it kind of transitions into this spot where the squad room is filled with all of these victims, including like this little girl that was G's first child victim that he had to deal with. Plus there's dead detectives, all very much alive. And Cressetti's one of them. And I think I'd have to research this and make sure, but I think Cressetti's the one that committed suicide at one point. But anyway, so Cressetti's like, hey, come on in, Lieutenant, sit down here. We're going to play some cards. And of course they kind of pretend to be his, I don't know to say pretend, but they are his guide to kind of like the afterlife. It's him and Bo Felton. They sit down at the table. He starts to play cards, but G notices there's a fourth chair there. And he asks, who's the fourth chair there for? And they're like, we don't know. We don't know. We don't know. We're going to find out soon enough. And then they proceed to have some coffee and play some cards. So who do you think the fourth chair's for?
Ooh, I don't know. What do you think?
It's going to be Bayless. I think Bayless kills himself. Kills himself and ends up in that afterlife squad room.
All right. So that's Homicide, the movie, and Homicide: Life on the Street, season 7. That is 3 seasons of Homicide, all by David Simon. Let me ask you a general question, and then we'll use this to sort of close out this show, because again, we are examining all of the great works of David Simon. This is David Simon has a voice. David Simon has a perspective. He is trying to tell you things. What is David Simon trying to say with these 3 seasons of Homicide that we've been discussing, in your opinion?
Well, I mean, that's a good question. I mean, you're looking at I always look at Homicide as being a gritty, realistic view of what happens on the street that NBC could show. Now, later we're going to have HBO really show us some good stuff.
Sure.
You know, it's going to get better. But I mean, that was always what. Go ahead.
Well, I was going to say, if you look at Homicide and you look at The Corner and then you look at The Wire, and it might be a little too early to start talking about this, but you know, I can always address it again later. It's almost a trilogy, and it's, you know, it's okay. Here is the law and order side of the drug war, but we're focusing on
what you're showing.
Yeah, the drug war begets skyrocketing murder rates for whatever the reasons are. Yep. And if you remember, again, he wrote a book about this, and the book is Homicide: Life on the Street, and that's what the show is based on. And so David Simon clearly saying, hey, the drug war has had this net effect on the city of Baltimore, a traditionally poor city, in the in the aftermath of the great fall of the middle class and the working class in that area. And so now, how are we dealing with this? And David Simon's perspective, and you see this in Homicide, and you also see it in The Wire, is how what a circular, sort of endless quagmire murder investigations tend to be. You're just sort of shoveling shit against the tide.
And the toll that it takes on the people trying to investigate this stuff. Yeah.
No, almost nobody gets out of this clean and healthy. You know, you think you're doing the Lord's work by bringing people to justice for doing sinful things, by committing murder. But really, you know, the drug war and then the subsequent homicides and the subsequent investigations of said homicides just is like a nuclear bomb going off. It just kills everyone around you, spiritually, emotionally, mentally, all of that, and in some cases physically. And so for me, it's like David Simon's like, I need to talk about this. I need to talk about the toll murder investigations take on people just trying to do good works. And then there's the shift of like, okay, well, we've talked about the cops, we've talked about the homicide unit. Let's talk about the drugs themselves. Let's talk about how the drugs affect the people that we're slamming into we're throwing into jail and into prison. And that's The Corner. Generational drug use in a family. That's what The Corner is going to be about. And we'll talk about that next month. And then there's The Wire, and The Wire kind of takes the similar themes of Homicide and expounds upon them. It says, let's see how the criminal side of it and the law side of it sort of work together in this sort of circular, interdependent relationship, and how nobody gets out of that clean. Nobody on the drug side gets out clean. Nobody on the cop side gets out clean. But also through the mechanism of showing you the ins and outs of a detail, a long form detail using wiretaps, it becomes the structure for which you're hanging on all these other things to talk about in the culture. And so I think between Homicide, The Corner, and The Wire, you really get this full view of what in just the city of Baltimore, what the drug war has done to that city. Worse than any military occupation or attack, bomb going off. When you think about the amount of people over generations it's affected on every level, on the people living in those communities, the drug addicted folks, the cops that investigate them and put them away, all of it. It's almost it's depressing. I love the show. I love the drama. I love the conversation that comes out of it, but you can't help but get a little depressed by it as well. So that's sort of my take on our discussion of bereft of hope. Yeah. But that's sort of my take on as we examined it, just leaving The Wire in The Corner out of it for just a minute, just looking at Homicide. You really do get a sense of David Simon's motivation and desire to show that, most of us don't think about homicide investigations. They don't think about homicide detectives. Just, you become a cop, you get promoted, you become a detective, you're off, doing great. But as we've seen, look at what happens to Kellerman over the course of the 3 seasons we looked at. Look what happens to Pembleton. Is there anybody left in this show from season 5 to season 7 that didn't leave under duress? They didn't leave because they were bereft of hope, because they had been burned out, or just because of the negative nature of the job, were making terrible decisions and ultimately were drummed out of the service.
Munch broke his penis.
And then really that's the greatest tragedy of all. And I'll thank you to not steal my thing of taking something serious and taking the piss out of it. Thank you very much. That's my job.
No, I'm actually running through the cast in my head to try and think about who came out of that unscathed. I mean, because Guardian Ballard got shot. I think, Munch is probably the only person that I can think of that actually did not get shot or is in some bad situation. I mean, he ends up with the girl at the end, and he just can't. He just can't consummate the marriage. I guess that's a tragedy. So
happens to the best of us, bro. Don't penis shame. Don't penis shame. Performance anxiety is real. Not that I would know.
Oh, your libido is as strong as ever, sir.
Fucking like He-Man in the 80s. He-Man and the Masters of the Universe.
It's a good time, man. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you very much. For at least we did 3 seasons of Homicide. Like I said, one of my favorite shows from back in the day, and it was good to revisit it and sit down and talk about it. And this
I'm like kidnapping you once a month to do like all the David Simon shows ever. You don't have to thank me. You're essentially a hostage. So
I don't think I'd watched Homicide the movie until we did this. So that actually gave me a closing chapter for a series that I didn't realize something was out there. Very nice, Michelle.
Speaking of something that's out there.
Very nice.
Anywho. You're not kidding. Very, very nice.
Very nice. It's a very nice.
Very nice. All right. So yeah, I mean, I pitched you this a little ways back before I decided I was cutting back on podcasts, and suddenly had to figure out how we were still going to do this because I wasn't going to renege. It was just one of those like passion projects of mine. I'm like, I just want to talk about David Simon shows. I love the guy. I love what he's done. The Wire is the best show ever. I want to talk about all the Dave and Simon stuff. And so we are now three chapters into this. So I'm feeling good about it. I'm really excited to talk about The Corner next. For those that don't know what it is, The Corner was a 6-episode miniseries that aired on HBO, sort of the prequel to The Wire in a way, much like Homicide is. And it just follows the mom, the dad, and the son of a broken family through the heroin addiction, the perils of heroin addiction, and what it does to those people. So it's awesome. It's heartbreaking. It's tragic, but it's some of the best TV you're ever gonna watch. So you've never seen it, right? This is gonna be the first experience with The Corner,
right? Yep. I am going to be experiencing this for the first time.
If you've got 6 hours to kill in a box of Kleenex, I suggest The Wire. Who's got a free hand and an empty weekend?
Yeah, I'll be checking that out here, man. I can't wait. Now I'm actually like, man, only 6 episodes. That's going to be really laid back compared to cramming 23 into.
They stop short of one
month.
They stop short of wanting you to kill yourself by the time it's over. So that 6 episodes is plenty.
Be your own Kellerman.
Yeah, exactly.
I hope
I've sold you on the magic of The Corner, the show likely to get you to kill yourself. It's a good time for the family, let me tell you. All right, speaking of a good time for the family, last night, myself, the Protocol son, Jason Teasley, David Wright, and everyone's favorite happy-go-lucky film critic, Robert Winfrey, we reviewed Top Gun Maverick. We spent the first 10 minutes just talking about, for the first time in damn you Hollywood history, I actually asked Robert what works that way and what doesn't. I almost had a heart attack, quite frankly.
Wow.
10 years of me saying, who gives a fuck? And I was like, no. Somebody asked me about it, so now you have to talk about this.
Right.
And talk about it. They did. Solid 10 minutes of jet fighter minutiae.
Planes.
Trains and automobiles, baby.
Yeah, that's good.
Speaking of planes, trains, and automobiles, we also reviewed me and the Podsmen. My buddies, Chris Sheehan and Chris Bailey. Chris Bailey, how do you do? We reviewed Hell in the Cell featuring Cody. Oh, Cody. People listening to this late at night, like, stop screaming. My husband's trying to sleep. Wake him up or wake the baby or something. Anyway, then because it's Pride Month and we're doing a series of shows focusing on the good, the bad, and the ugly of queer cinema, like we did for Black History Month, myself and Sean Comer did an extra special episode of Damn You Hollywood, where we reviewed Fire Island, which came out on June 3rd, currently available on Hulu. And I don't know why it was on the list in the first place, but apparently it's an LGBTQ plus movie. Master on Amazon Prime. If you can figure it out, I will send you a shiny nickel in the mail. We also, because it's Jurassic World is this Friday, Jurassic World Dominion, we've been re-airing our old Jurassic World content, starting with the Everyone Loves a Bad Guy for Dinosaurs and Dragons, and then Long Road to Ruin, Jurassic Park, Damn You Hollywood, Jurassic World, just Jurassic World, not Fallen Kingdom. That's already up and available. And that's it. Next week, we will have a re-airing of our review of The Good Dinosaur, the Long Road to Ruin for Toy Story. Jesse, was it Toy Story or was it Metal Hammer of Doom that made you a part of the Radulich Broadcasting cult?
That'd be Metal Hammer of Doom.
Okay.
I like Toy Story, but I can't say that made me go, oh, I gotta pay attention to these guys.
I believe that's officially when this became a cult, because like Jason heard the Long Road to Ruin on Toy Story, Andrew Graham heard it, and like all of a sudden, all these people who were quietly listening to our little itty bitty show heard the Toy Story thing, were like contacting me afterwards, and then I kidnapped them and put them in my basement. Then I pulled them out periodically to do shows. So, but you came willingly because of the Metal Hammer.
Yeah, I showed up. Okay, you want to look, if you want to trace it back, it's the Casual Heroes. You were making appearances over there, and I was like, oh, I'll check this dude out. And then next thing I know, I see you guys doing Metal Hammer of Doom retrospectives on Megadeth, talking about Clutch. I'm like, this is my best friend.
And you're my best friend. Actually, you were a fucking weirdo, and I didn't know why you were talking to me, and I tried to ignore you for a while, and then you wouldn't go away.
Go ahead and do that. You go ahead and do that. Look where you end up.
You wouldn't leave me alone. You stalked me, and then I finally gave in, and here we are, married for 10 years now.
That's right.
All right.
Somebody
So
throw an eggplant up or something. I don't know.
or pineapple, anything. I'm gonna get myself into trouble. Let's just get out of here. All right. Why don't you go ahead and do your plugs there, Daddy-O?
All right. Well, hey, if you like comics, I got some content for you over on the Source Material Comics podcast feed. You can listen to me. All right, now we're in the throes of the celebration of 30 years of Image Comics. If you liked Image Comics, me and Chris Armstrong counted down the #1 issues submitted by each founder for that initial launch of Image Comics. You know, we got Savage Dragon in there. We have Cyberforce. We're talking Shadowhawk. Anyway, that's daily. That's happening right now. It's daily. It's not long podcasts, folks. We're talking 15, 20 minutes max. I think at the end, we may get up to 40 minutes because we want to justify our #1 pick. But we just dropped, I think, we've got 3 more episodes of that left. So if you like comics, go check out the Source Material Comics feed. I don't know if you mentioned it already, but we talked about Jurassic Park, The Devil's in the Desert. Me and Ronnie Adams dropped it on the, me and Ronnie Adams sat down, and it's John Byrne talking about a Jurassic Park. I mean, what? This is John Byrne of X-Men fame, you know? Anyway, check that out. Me and Ronnie had a good time. There is a polar bear versus a pteranodon.
Bears. Hey, Jesse, remember?
Bears.
Bears.
That went right through my, I totally went through my brain.
Nucci's got the ill communication. Nucci's got the ill communication.
That's
this
right.
Is jokes between me and Jesse from previous podcasts. I don't expect anyone to get it, but it fucking makes me laugh. So
go back in the archives, folks. And then next week on Wednesday, that's good stuff. Next week, Wednesday drops my solo podcast, hopping into Source Material.
Did you put something more in the body this time, or did you I'm Jesse and I read a comic?
Count Duckula #1, right there, right in the body. That's it. That's all it says.
I would come back. I would do a third in August when I stopped doing this more than two times a week. I would do a third episode a week just to talk about Count Duckula. That's a fucking great show.
Well, I learned a lot definitely when I was reading the comic and looking up some stuff for the wiki. So yeah, I heard a lot of people really enjoy that show. I don't think you're the only one I've heard on the network actually mention Count Duckula before.
Mm-hmm.
The other thing I want to kind of, I was born to do a podcast and counting down time travel movies. Go check out Kapow, the Pop Culture Podcast. They just dropped part 1 of that, where we went from 10 to 5.
You've already recorded it. Did you take over like Scott Hall?
No, I know a couple guys there that were definitely on my level. And now these guys, basically what we ended up with was a definite Kapow list. Every personality's got to get their flavor in there, but we went from 20 to 1, and there was a whole like game structure that went into with these picks. Like people could veto picks, which I did. Trust you me. I was like, there's no way. At one point, I'll go ahead and give this away. At one point, a dude suggested Field of Dreams as a time travel movie.
Get the fuck out of here. Get the fuck out of here.
I was like,
Field
using
of
my
Dreams.
veto right now. I was like, so,
that's a bit of a reach.
It was interesting. Like I said, we got all flavors coming from each member of the Kapow. I was on there as a guest. I loved being there. We had a good time. First episode of that dropped. We're counting down time travel movies. Second episode of that should be counting 5 to 1 or wherever we landed. So check that out. It was a lot of fun. That's it. I'm done, Mark. We're going to be coming back for the corner.
Absolutely. From the corner to the deuce. The great works of David Simon, a podcast especially proud to be doing with my buddy, Jesse Starcher. All right. Thank you. Hey, I want everyone that came out and watched live tonight. You didn't have to do that. You all have families, presumably. You all have stuff that you could have been doing. There's only a zillion other live streams going on at the exact same time. But you hung out to watch us talk about a 20-year-old show.
Right.
So
we appreciate that. We do.
We appreciate you. And so anyone that hangs out with us and puts stuff in the comments, as long as it's, you're not trying to sell me crypto or quote Bible passages, true story. We'll have fun and we'll interact with you. Jesse and I will interact with you all night long. All right. That's the last part of the night. Be well, be safe, and behave.